We are in an assembly hall right in the middle of Scotland. Usually it would be packed full of hundreds of pupils. North, south, east and west of here, there are more than 360 other secondary schools like this. Now, if you can picture the many hundreds of thousands of secondary pupils who would fill that on a daily basis, picture this. 3 in every 5 of those pupils has a problem. It's a problem that could potentially limit their ability to attain to the levels they want to at school, and could even place limitations on their ability to fulfill their career opportunities and their dreams and aspirations after school. That issue is anxiety. Now, our theme this morning is resilience, and resilience is the ability to bounce back from failure, to overcome setbacks, and go on to succeed. But anxiety is the enemy of resilience. Anxiety causes us to have a fear of getting things wrong, to feel that failure is dangerous and want to run away from it. So to become resilient, we must first seek to banish anxiety. Developing a growth mindset is one approach that's been proven to help young people develop their resilience. A growth mindset is based on 30 years of robust research into how the brain works and how people learn by Dr. Carl Dweck of Stanford University in California. And the idea behind growth mindset is very much common sense. It's the idea that if you can apply purposeful effort, you can use different strategies, you're persistent, and most of all, you learn to embrace struggle and learn from your mistakes, you can go on to achieve success in whatever it is you choose. Winning Scotland Foundation work with many hundreds of schools to support them to develop a growth mindset culture across Scotland, and we're going to share some of our ideas with you this morning. However, let's get back to this idea of anxiety. That 3 out of 5 figure comes from research that was conducted in 2018 by Winning Scotland Foundation and Stanford University, where we asked more than 4,500 secondary school pupils in Scotland, how do you feel about one particular thing? And that particular thing was maths. And it was 3 out of every 5 pupils said that maths makes them feel anxious or nervous. So why is this, and what is maths anxiety? Research into the brain shows that when we are put under pressure in maths, asked to answer a question like, what's 18 times 5, or what's 50% of 25, and we're on the spot, 2 things happen. One is that the fear centre in our brain lights up like an ambulance siren. And that chemical reaction that's taking place is the same chemical reaction that happens when we would see something scary like a snake or a shark or a spider. At the same time, our problem-solving centre in our brain is inhibited. It becomes very, very difficult to be able to think clearly under that kind of pressure. Another challenge that causes this anxiety is something like ability groupings in class. If a child is led to believe early on in their school career that they are no good at something, they are very likely to remain in that position for the remainder of their school career, so research tells us. But there are many other reasons why we can have this feeling of anxiety towards maths in particular. A lot of it comes from what we experience at home. And although well-intentioned, it can be things like parents turning around to say, please don't ask me to help you with your maths homework, I was rubbish at maths when I was at school. Or, go and ask your mother, I hate maths. What does this do? It does 2 things. First of all, it reinforces this idea that maths is something to be feared and avoided. This backs up research conducted by the Making Maths Count group in 2016, that the perception of maths in Scotland is that it is a subject to be feared and avoided. But it also enforces and reinforces the idea that it's okay to be anxious and disengaged about maths because mum and dad were, they're fine, why should it bother me? And then we have the challenge of society. I imagine in the coming weeks, many of you will find yourselves wandering listlessly around a toy shop somewhere in Scotland, wishing you were anywhere but there. So when you find yourself in that position, I challenge you to do this. Have a look at the packaging and the marketing of the toys and who they're targeted at. What you'll find, invariably, is that things like dolls, ponies, princesses, fluffy toys are packaged in pink and marketed at girls. Things like Lego, Meccano, drones, robots, cars, packaged in colours like blue or black and marketed at boys. Does it then surprise you that more males go into STEM-related subjects at a higher level and STEM-related careers than females? Does it surprise you that when we take that research of 3 and 5 secondary school-aged pupils being anxious about maths and apply it only to the females who responded to that survey, that it rises to 4 in 5 girls in secondary school feeling anxious about maths? So how do we cope with this? How do we deal with it? There are 2 different styles of approach that I'm going to share with you today. The first is something called mathematical mindsets. This is a methodology coined by Dr. Joe Bowler, also of Stanford University, and a close colleague of Dr. Dweck, who developed growth mindset. Bowler applies the idea of mindset specifically to maths and looks at some key areas that can help to reduce that anxiety. Firstly, she absolutely dispels the myth that we are born either with or without a maths brain, either with or without an ability to do numbers. The research that she has conducted and the research of many others suggests that's simply untrue. Secondly, she seeks to move away from what is now seen as an old-fashioned and out-of-touch approach to teaching maths where it's done by rote. It's based on speed and memory and the ability to respond quickly to a question. And instead looks to move towards an approach that is holistic, an approach that encourages open discussion about maths problems in a real-world context, an approach that encourages collaboration, and crucially, an approach that encourages maths to be taught and learned in an environment that is completely safe, where failure is seen as an opportunity to learn, where mistakes are celebrated because we've learned one more way in which we do not get to the answer to that sum, but we can still look at the approach that we took to get to that answer. Mindset mathematics is being used and experimented with by hundreds of schools in Scotland, and it's already starting to see success. There's one school in South Ayrshire that we can refer to who, before starting out, learned that 44%, so nearly half of the pupils in a particular class were anxious about maths. This was something they didn't even know was an issue until they asked the question. But after just a year of using these types of methodology, that's now dropped to 0. No pupils are anxious. But more importantly, the pupils are significantly more willing to take on difficult maths tasks, and when they take them on, they're significantly more willing to stick to them and persist and keep trying until they get it right. I'm also going to share with you now several tools that are used by schools across the country. And I must caveat to say that while these tools can be useful in isolation, they are much more valuable when used in a general environment of growth mindset. The first is the challengeometer. And very simply, the challengeometer enables a young person and their teacher or their parent to chart where they are in their learning, how it's making them feel, how challenged it is. This can be done at the end of a lesson, at the end of the day, at the end of the week, by using a marker or a sticker for a pupil to say where they are. And there's a couple of key things to take from this. The first is that obviously we always want to avoid young people spending too much time in their comfort zone because no learning is taking place there. But equally, if not more importantly, We want young people to avoid stepping into that panic zone, because we know that's when things start getting really difficult. We know that's when our brain stops being able to function properly. And where we want young people to be is in that stretch zone, in that improvement zone. We know that that's where the optimal learning is taking place. When young people are being stretched, are being challenged in a safe environment, that's where they can learn the best. The success iceberg is a very useful visual for pupils especially. It works very well when pupils see others, see peers, perhaps leaping ahead of them in a certain subject, suddenly performing better, and they ask themselves, am I just no good at this? Why is my classmate suddenly so much better than me? Are they just gifted and I'm not? This allows pupils to see below the surface, to understand that so much more goes into achieving those visible successes than just ability. It's about dedication, effort, hard work, sacrifice, persistence. This is what goes into it. This is one of our favourite ones. We've talked a lot this morning about the fact that it's okay to make mistakes, and that is a good thing. Gone are the days where we dread seeing the red pen on our jotters. But that can cause a risk, and the risk is complacency. The risk is an attitude that says, well, if it's okay to make mistakes and I'm not going to get in trouble for it, why should I try? So what we want to say straight up is that sloppy mistakes are always unacceptable. That if you're making the same mistake again and again and again and failing to address what's causing that, that's unacceptable. But let's look at the mistakes that are okay. And we'll talk about the big moment first of all, because we've all been there. We've all had the exam, the driving test, the job interview, the TED talk, where we feel under pressure and our heart's beating. And we know from the research that that's when our brain sometimes lets us down. But we can do two things. Firstly, we can understand that that is going to be the case and be aware of that. And then the second thing we can do is prepare for it. We can practice and be ready for the big moment. That's why we have driving lessons. That's why we do prelims. That's why myself and Gavin and Graham probably rehearsed this 3 times in the car driving up this morning. The stretch moment and the eureka moment mistake can best be described by thinking of them together. For many years, Winning Scotland Foundation worked with schools like Lawrence Hill to bring successful sportsmen and women in to work with pupils, to talk to them about things like resilience. And where we always saw a fantastic response from pupils was when it went into doing something physical with the pupils in the gym hall. And the athletes would intentionally give the pupils a task to do that was going to stretch them, that was difficult. So let's use the example of a hockey player teaching young people how to juggle the hockey ball with a hockey stick. When it was demonstrated and the pupils were left to their own devices, it was a disaster. They were getting it wrong. They were getting frustrated. But that encouraged them to say, this is okay. It's normal to make mistakes at this point. You're stretching yourselves. This is your chance to learn. Enables the pupils to keep going, to keep engaging, because they know that they're in an environment where it's safe and they can stretch themselves safely. And then the eureka moment happens. They make the mistake and they go, I know where I've gone wrong, and I know now that's the last time I make that mistake. And we're using this approach. The pupils learn something new by stretching themselves and having that eureka moment. And finally, the learning pit. A very, very simple visual which essentially shows that when we are learning something new or something challenging, it's inevitable that we will make mistakes, and that a point will come where it feels horrible. A point will come where we want to quit. We want to be anywhere but where we are right now because it feels awful. Now, businesses know this. When Apple sought to develop the iPhone, the device that changed how we live our lives today, they told their staff, this is going to be awful. We're going to try so many things that go wrong the first time around, and we're going to be scratching around for a long time trying to figure out how to get it. Are you going to want to give up? but we encourage you to keep going, to keep seeking to learn, to keep getting better until you get to the right answer. But young people don't necessarily know this. So by enabling them with this visual to say that when you get to this point where it feels awful, that's normal, and that by applying strategies, persisting, using a lot of effort in the right places, you can get to where you want to be. And I can illustrate this most powerfully by the example of a school around about a mile from here that we recently worked with, where the teacher told us that one of his pupils was disengaging from maths, and that every time they moved to a new subject, whether it was fractions, whether it was decimals, she became upset. She became disruptive. She didn't want to engage because she knew she was going to have that horrible feeling. But by using the learning pit and helping that pupil understand that that's normal, and that she will get out of the other side by using these different strategies, she's now able to engage in maths and even enjoy it. That's the power of the learning pit, and that is the potential of resilience. Thank you very much.